All right. So I've been playing a little bit of Legacy for the fun of it. Incidentally, if the sound is bad to you, I apologize. My mic is somewhere. We've been moving some things in the house. So anyway, playing a little bit of Legacy and enjoying it, and I thought I'd share with you what I've been doing. Haven't had time for a lot else lately, unfortunately. But yeah, so this is a deck that I've been playing. I've been tweaking that attempt at a Legacy control deck. Quite difficult to do in a format with so many totally unfair things coming at you from so many different directions, or what feels unfair anyway, certainly. When you fight against like Dredge in one match, and then you're fighting against 1-mana 3/2 flyers in the next one, it's pretty rough. But here's where I've settled on, and as you can see, well, you'll see in a few of these games that this isn't the final build. Or at least it wasn't in the final configuration for all of the games. But I will run through a few. And I think the one at the end is particularly interesting. Hopefully you'll enjoy that especially. I know that I did. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and just get into the games and we'll see what happened. So let's ignore the Legacy results. Let's see if I can select the Commander results in the Chaos, whatever that is. So as you can see, it's been a little hit or miss. Couple wins here with the final version of the deck. A loss as I was tuning, a couple losses, tweaked it. A couple wins in the middle, and so forth. So I guess I'll just run through all of them. That's a lot of games. I'll run through the last four. I'll run through the 2 losses and the 2 wins, and then we'll just kind of see how that was. You can see, actually, if you look at the timestamps, these 2 games were played at 10:18, 10:46, made adjustments, and then 11:30 and 12:17. So I think I'll start with the 10:13. We'll run through these last 5 sets. So this game here was against Swamp Thing 88, and this was just one game, and we'll see how it goes. So as you can see, I was playing around with some different cards here, like Lotus and so forth. I had, so my opponent cycles Phantasm or discards Phantasmagorian and starts going off. They're playing some sort of graveyard reanimation thing. Get another Shadow Icarid. This is not a good way to start a game. I'm not quite sure how I win this game. Apparently I did. And, top deck Nihil Spellbomb. Okay, I'll take it. I'm going to immediately exile my opponent's grave, I believe. Probably, yeah, right now. Let me do that. So I exile my opponent's grave there. Hits me for 3. I draw a card, find a land. Get Kaya down. I 0 it and remove the zombie, and then my opponent scoops. That's how that game went. Of course, one more turn, and I got to Fairy down, and I take out another Shadow as well. One has no grave, and 4 turns before he can build up. This game's all done. So that was kind of a funny rip there, I guess. Anyway, I had a couple games here where I lost, a couple matches rather. So I guess I'll spin through those. And you can just see how painful it is to lose with some of these. And as you can see, like I said, I was trying different things. There's a Mirror, there's a Caracas, which is now Basic Plains. And opponent is playing Dredge. I do not have the Miracle artifact. And, well, basically, this opponent's deck is going to kill me very quickly. And there's pretty much, I would say, well, there's truly nothing I can do about it. This is just too many cards, and I'm dead. And so we move into game 2 because there's just absolutely nothing my deck can do from that position. So I have to mulligan here. I end up mulliganing into this hand. And I think you know how this goes against Dredge. So opponent's going to discard a Dredger, and I'm going to go ahead and attempt to Gaia's Blessing it away. Thinking, okay, maybe I have some game here. Opponent has cycled Street Wraith in response, and I just scoop. I don't want to deal with that. So, all right, whatever. So I move on to another game, another match. I'm playing against Isaac. And in round 1, so the deck is starting to move in the direction, I think, of the final build here. Getting a little bit closer from what I can see. No more of that silliness with the Lotus and all that business. All right, so I've got a good start. Opponent's start is very slow for legacy. Oh, excuse me. I get hymned, which is pretty horrible, losing a tithe and a scrubland. But I guess there's more cards for my search for Escanta. I go ahead and throw away the Tabernacle there. Draw a counterspell and pass. Opponent goes for Dark Confidant. I'm going to counter that. And then search reveals, I believe, another Honden. Yeah, playing around with Hondens. I just cycle it off, find another counterspell. Opponent goes for a second Dark Confidant, which I counter again. This gets me into, and then plays a Tarmogoyf. This gets me into flip my Escanta territory. So go ahead and not get rid of that Tundra, flip the Escanta, and I'm 4 mana. I get bash for 5 with my opponent's Tarmogoyf, but I can factor fiction here. And it gives me Moat or the rest. I go ahead and take Moat. And decide that I'm going to Nihil Spellbomb. I'm not paying too close attention to the nothing that this is going to do here. I should have just slammed Moat, I think. But yeah, I was trying to get Moat with counter backup. So I exile my opponent's grave, and it does literally nothing to protect my life total. And then my opponent plays Liliana. And because I spent a mana doing nothing, I can't Snapcaster counter it, which I would have liked to have done. So instead I just Snapcaster Brainstorm and attack it. So start going after my opponent's mana. Boy, the yawning is terrible. Opponent tries an Assassin's Trophy on my Escanta, which I'm going to use in response, finding a counterspell. And then I let the Assassin's Trophy hit, and I go get an island. Wasteland finishes resolving, and I attack Liliana. Opponent has exactly Punishing Fire in hand, I believe, is what I had seen him pick up, if I remember correctly. Oh, we'll see. Yeah, Punishing Fire in hand. So I go ahead and counter that. Opponent plays their last card, and then that gives me a window to play my Moat. So I go ahead and play Moat. Still have Liliana to deal with, unfortunately. I'm going to throw away an island here. I don't know if that's correct or not, but I do get a blessing there, so I get to get rid of my opponent's Punishing Fires into a land. Now if my opponent uses Liliana and doesn't have a play, well, they have Edict, it's not super meaningful, then I'm going to at least get their card. So get their Hymn to Torok as they're ticking up their Liliana. Find an Abyss, which is very nice, so we'll go ahead and get those Tarmogoyfs out off the board before Liliana can clear my Moat. Go ahead and get a Wasteland down. Abyss away the other Tarmogoyf. Opponent decides not to ultimate Liliana here and is waiting. I'm not fetching in case I could draw a shuffle effect. Oh, I'm sorry. I do find swords. I'm going to bet after this for sure. Opponent does a split that I don't totally agree with. Gives me like Abyss and Moat and 3 mana sources, so I'll take that. I'll draw a counter and pass. I'm just going to Liliana. I'm going to give up the swords, I'm sure. Goes for a Chandra, and I'm able to counter that. So keep that off the board. Very hard fought game, right? Draw a Gorilla Shaman's not doing me any good here. Opponent takes it out of my hand and loses their own Tarmogoyf, which was dead anyway because of the Abyss. And I top deck Dovin. All right. Let's make flyers that don't care about the Abyss. Opponent draws an Abrupt Decay right exactly perfectly on time, unfortunately. Before I could get a second creature out to finish off Liliana, opponent bolts me to my face. So I draw a Blessing, and I decide to Blessing in Dovin and a couple other cards. I impulse, unfortunately, finding Caracas and Teferi, which I have to regretfully tuck because if I take the Teferi, it's just going to be taken from my hand with Liliana the Veil. Opponent's draw for the turn is Miri's Guile. Yeah, I was playing around with the Honden still in this version. Not good. Caracas is also a basic Plains now because I was too vulnerable to Blood Moon. So I've got a black Honden that's pretty worthless since my opponent's Liliana the Veil is doing all the Honden efforts needed. Opponent Punishing Fires my flyer, pumps up Liliana and passes. I Fragmentize the Miri's Guile and pass. Plays another Liliana and pluses. It's same. They can't hold it, so. And I draw a Jace off the top, and I'm going to go ahead and try to build my hand back up. So I take some cards. Putting Chromatic Lantern in my hand is the card that I'm willing to feed to Liliana. London doing stone cold nothing. I'm going to go ahead and Jace here. Getting rid of a Force of Will. Keeping a DAC. Do a little Blessing shuffles. Play my DAC. Plus, throw away a couple of cards. One that damages me and one that counterspell is going to be pulled out of my hand. And go ahead and play land and pass. I've got the hiccups now. Opponent draws an Abrupt Decay. But there are no targets, so they actually have to pitch it to Liliana, which is pretty nice to see happen. I Jace into a Force of Will, play a land and pass. Opponent picks up Punishing Fire, and I am able to Force of Will at They try to cast their spell before using Liliana, so either way, if they'd use... That's why I kept the Force of Will, because if they use Liliana, I don't need to force, and if they don't use Liliana, then I can force, so good either way. All right, I hope we're not going to bug out here. It looks like we are. So the next card that I drew was the Dovin that I reshuffled back in. I get Dovin, and I think... What was the last card? It was Dovin, and it was like another... I don't remember, but it was another business card off of the draw plus Jace. And so I'm able to get Dovin down and make a guy. And my opponent just, I guess, scoops because they don't want to loop through this whole game all over again. Or maybe, was that the draw? I think it was. Anyway, yeah, as you can see, there's not much left in the library. In the next two games, basically my opponent gets out Liliana and I die. They're a little bit slow and it looks like it's bugged. And then we'll move into the last two where I'm using, I believe, the final configuration for Split Basil, certainly for Red Cross, which I think is the most interesting game. So Split Basil here gets one game on me. I don't know which one it is. I have to mulligan, and then I end up mulliganing into this. I don't know what they're playing, of course. But, so I still don't know if they're on Eldrazi or Red Prison, like a Karn Prison. So with the lack of knowledge, I'm just going to go ahead and attack the Ancient Tomb. Opponent wastelands me here, which is not bad for me. Buys me some time to find the mana. It's an Eye of Ugin, and the answer is clear. They're on Eldrazi. So I'm going to go ahead and play another source of blue. Opponent goes for a Reality Smasher by pitching a Simian Spirit Guide, so I 2-for-1 them off a counterspell, which is real nice. Draw another counterspell, which is even nicer, which stomps a Thought-Knot Seer. Take some damage there, and top deck the Abyss. So Slamola goes the Abyss, and goodbye goes the Mimic. Opponent is not gonna decides they're not gonna run cards out into the Abyss, so we're just playing a waiting game where I'm really hoping to get some mana and get that Teferi going. Of course, I get my mana right after they draw their Thorn, so I'm still down a land. So I just draw and pass. Opponent plays a Ballista on 1. Good. Here, I draw my 6th land, and I'm able to go ahead and cast a Fairy, plus it up. The Ballista will swim through the Abyss, of course. Opponent, but I untap the Wasteland as part of the Teferi resolution and Wasteland them immediately. One of them plays a City of Traders, attacks Teferi and passes, or attacks me for one, I think, and passes. I'm going to plus Teferi up and pass. Opponent's going to finally realize they need to attack Teferi, so they do. And step, I just shuffle because I already have. I'm trying to deck thin ever so slightly, right? My turn, I'm going to Deluge for 1, plus up Teferi, untap those lands, and I actually have enough mana to cast Counterspell here easily enough. I can even Force a Will if I had to, although it's highly unlikely I would. And at this point, my opponent realizes they're facing the Abyss and Teferi. I've got tons of mana, so Chalice is doing nothing against me from what they can see, and Thorn is definitely doing nothing against me at this point, and they just scoop. They're on a tenuous mana base at that point. So I agree with the scoop there. All right, round 2. I believe my opponent must have won because we played best of 3. So I keep this. It seems reasonable. Opponent goes endless one. I I go ahead and force the second one because 4 damage per turn is a little too much. Or whatever it would have been. And then waste them. When it gets a Cavern of Souls, which is bad news, but then double Simian Spirit Guides into a Matter Reshaper. So I've sideboarded into 4 plows at this point, so any plow should get me in this game. I go ahead and throw away a counterspell there. But instead I draw both guys' blessings, so I'm going to shuffle, not find plow. Opponent smashes in for 5 again. Teferi is not plow. I find Kaya, so I'm playing Desperation here. I'm going to play Kaya and then gain 2 life. Opponent sends in for 5 at face, taking me to 1. I get a Deluge, and if this works, I'm going to be in good shape. So I play Lantern, I minus Kaya for life, Deluge for 2, and as long as he doesn't hit, all I needed was for my opponent to hit Thorn of Amethyst, a land, anything that was too expensive, or an Endless one, which would have come into play as a 0/0. Basically, there was only 1 card in the deck that I could not have them find there. I think that's the only card in the deck. Yeah. Well, 2 cards. So I didn't need him to find a Simian Spirit Guide, and I did not need him to find a Mimic. Unfortunately, they got the Mimic, so we move on to game 3. I could have actually pulled out of that game and been fine, which would have been really neat. All right, so I've got a good hand here. It's got Force, it's got Removal, it's got Mana. It's about all you can ask for. Opponent gets first turn Endless one. I get turn 2 Tundra, which sets me up for a counterspell. That's real nice. Opponent's got 4 mana now, and on this turn plays a Matter Reshaper. I had enough of him in the last game, so I'm going to go ahead and counter this. Although it takes me out Force of Will, so I'm going to eat some damage here. And then rather than wastelanding my opponent, I go ahead and play Chromatic Lantern. I'm going to play Sorceress Spyglass, naming Duretti, and then an Endless one on 4. Unfortunately for them, I'm going to Kaya it, and it's going to come back as a 0/0. I then wasteland my opponent and pass. My opponent attacks me for 2 with Endless one. Their card comes back, as I said, as a 0/0. I go ahead and kill both creatures in play. Opponent hits an Ancient Tomb off the effect from the Matter Reshaper, and then I go ahead and snag a card from them with Kaya, plussing me up. Opponent then plays Walking Ballista on 2. I just leave it alone. I Kaya targeting it, which will also remove the counters off of it if they allow it. Instead, they shoot Kaya twice and we pass. I can hard counter with Force Up, so I'm going to do that because it's more mana efficient for me to spend 5 mana here than it would have been to plow. All right, so now I'm going to Kaya and go ahead and cast Duretti here, only because if I can get rid of the Spyglass, then I have a Duretti already in play, ready to go. Opponent plays the land here, and I'm on a counterspell, obviously, plan. So they go for All Is Dust, which is going to be countered. I'm hoping to get a Tithe off and get 2 mana sources, but doesn't look like it's going to happen. I go ahead and zero the Kaya out, pass for the turn, Force of Will at the ready. Not Duretti, at the ready. All right, so at the end of my opponent's turn, Kaya, or beginning of mine, was it end of my opponent's turn? Kaya comes back and I draw Jace. So I Jace and Kaya, my opponent's hand. They've got no cards in hand whatsoever, but they do top deck an Eye of Ujin. And I find a Fragmentize, which means that I'm free to start plussing Duretti, draw extra cards off Kaya, get Search down. Of course, I'm Jacing, Fact or Fiction at the end of my opponent's turn, take a Dovin and 2 lands. I let a Force of Will go and flip my Search for Azcanta. At this point, it's pretty elementary. I'm going to go ahead and play Dovin, gain a life, plus up Duretti, remove my Kaya. I've got to flip this Azcanta. My hand is stacked, and I can hardcast counter plus Force of Will. So the only way they're going to get through this is if they can get a... but they have only 1 card in hand, so they have to have exactly a... I also have mode in play, right? So they have to have exactly a Cavern of Souls plus something that actually affects this board. Pretty unlikely. Opponent thinks so too, so they scoop. And... oh, sorry. Only 28 cards left in my library. I'm going through cards pretty quickly here, and I can there are 3 of them are wastelands. So if I can find one wasteland, then I can take out that eye before they hit their 7th mana and start searching for things that I might not be happy seeing them get. Anyway, good game against Eldrazi there. And then I had this game against Red Cross playing lands, which should be incredibly hard and is for me, but things work out nicely. So, of course, I don't know what my opponent's playing here. I'm just going to lead Spellbomb in case they're, just because I don't know what they're going to play and it's mana efficient, so let's just get it down. So they play Catacombs, and I'm thinking like they're on some kind of rock build. And then I see Thespian Sage Mox, and I realize that they're on lands, so we go for a gamble here. End up pitching Punishing Fire. And at the end of their turn, I'm going to go ahead and Brainstorm. Yuck. Triple land. That's pretty awful. I go ahead and take 1, though. And play a Gorilla Shaman and eat their Mox. Opponent cycles a Tranquil Thicket in response. I'm going to go ahead and waste their Taiga. And I figured if they go for Loam here, because I put them on Loam once I saw the Mox, I'll just sack the Nihil Spellbomb. But if they don't, and I can get this Swamp down, boom. Now, if they go for it, I get to draw a card, which is so much the better. All right, so they go for Punishing Fire, and I decide that'll be good enough. I'm going to go ahead and hit them now and keep them off Moxes. So I get a Sterling Grove, exile their graveyard, and draw a card. They go for Gamble. Losing Grove, hit me with a Wasteland, and pass because they don't have enough mana to actually cast Loam. I'm going to go ahead and play the Grove and attack. There's not much for me to get here with Grove against this specific opponent. Pretty much all I could go get would be Search for Escanta, and then as soon as they get up to Wasteland, it's bad news. Now, the really bad news is that they got Exploration. Because they got Exploration here, I'm in a lot of trouble. So I'm going to go ahead and Impulse, looking for either Force of Will or a way to kill Exploration. Opponent Crop rotates, and then Loams. I let that happen. They Wasteland me. I obviously can stop that. They GQ me, which does get me a land, so it keeps me in this game. I find a second blue source, and I now have a counterspell for their Loam. Now I know that they only have 2 cards in hand. I don't know what they are, but they're probably not great. All right, so there's one of them, because if they were lands, they would have pushed them out with Exploration. So I hard counter the Loam, and they do not hit a land drop, which is amazing. I find a Wasteland. I'm not going to use it, however, because I've got Fact or Fiction and Force of Will. So they go for Loam again. I'm going to Fact in response. I want that Jace quite a bit, but I'll take the other pile and Force of Will at the Misdirection, since I'm unlikely to... Misdirection can only target like Punishing Fire, and that's a pretty weak sauce play. I'm going to Blessing and tuck away their Loam and both of their burn spells, and pass for the turn with 2 blue up, which is amazing. And then my opponent has no play, so I get to Flooded Strand, Tithe into just a single land, play Teferi and draw a card, smash in with Gorilla Shaman. They have no play because I tucked their Loam. And now I can sit on a counterspell and pass for the turn. And at this point, my opponent's had enough. They're at 12, and they're going to get beat to death by a Gorilla Shaman almost certainly. But even if they weren't, they're in a pretty bad spot right here. I'm at a point now in the game where I can actually search with Sterling Grove and go get Search for Escanta, I think, and be perfectly happy with that result. Because Search Teferi is just gross as anything. And the sooner I can set up and draw extra cards like that, before I run out of counterspells, the better, because I want to dig down to Blessing and then just recycle counters and continuously dig them up with an Escanta. It'll stop once my opponent draws a Wasteland, but there's already 2 in their graveyard. And if they thought about it, they could like Thespian Sage my Wasteland, but the problem for them is if they target it, I'm just going to sack it in response, and if they use 2 mana and a Thespian Sage to clone it, it'll be tapped, and then I'm just going to waste it away. So either way, it's not going to work great for them. So they just scoop. And we go to game 2. And if you noticed, I have, well, the sideboard against them is, I bring in an extra plow. And I brought in 3 invasive surgeries. I took out Misdirection. I took out Moat. I took out the Abyss. And I took out... took out Toxic Deluge because I certainly don't want to be paying 20 life to kill something. So I did not bring Composted. Yeah, so I bring in the 3 Invasive Surgeries and an extra Plow. Take out these 4 cards here. So there's the sideboard, and then we'll move into the last game. All right, so in the last game against lands, so you can let them loam if you can keep them off of fast mana exploration, and you can let them explore if you can keep them off alone. But what you can't do is let them do both normally, or else you're probably going to lose. So I lead off with Fetch Land, of course, because I don't want to be wastelanded. I have a counterspell, so I'm going to not play Search for Azcanta. One is going to go for Loam here. I'm going to go ahead and fetch double Basic Island, Counterspell. I know they have GQ in their deck, but I do still have a Plains in there. So at this point, I decided I'm going to go Dovin instead of Crucible, plus it up, so that I can try to pressure them, so we can fight over control while I have like a clock that could potentially draw me quite a few cards. All right, so I'm going to make another Thopter, get in for 1, play my Search for Azcanta, and pass. With having drawn a blue card, which is really nice. Opponent goes for Loam there. So the plan here is, like I said, if I can't stop the Loam, the plan is to stop the Explore. All right, so deck Faden could be extremely good if I can get their Mox stolen. So I'm going to go ahead and plus Dovin and attack for 2, which will plus him 2 more times here, as opposed to minusing him. Play line and pass, because I'm not able to flip Azcanta yet. I'm not able to play my Crucible yet. One plays a Ghost Quarter there. Gambles and then plays a Ghost Quarter. Ports my island, so I go ahead and float blue. Get rid of a Swords, which is very risky business, of course. I plus up Dovin, play Crucible, and attack, thinking, okay, Dovin's going to go to 7 here, but my opponent has a Punishing Fire, so it goes to 6. So I cannot ultimate next turn, which is where I thought I would be. Opponent runs a Gamble and throws away Dark Depths. I wonder if that's the card they went and fetched. Anyway, they're going to go all in on a big play and Engineer Explosives for 3, which I can then force a Will, which is phenomenal for me because there's going to be a huge tempo swing here. I tuck Chromatic Lantern, get an extra land from Azcanta, waste them, replay a Volcanic from the graveyard, steal a Mox, plus Dovin, attack, which will put him at 8, and pass. And that's it. My opponent scoops. Massive, massive swing in tempo right there. Obviously, like they can loam here and get 3 cards and like play a land that kills, say, Azcanta, right? But then on my turn, I get to draw. I get to then ultimate Dovin and still have it be in play. I get to plus up Dak afterwards and throw some lands in the graveyard, then replay one of those lands, which would be Wasteland, of course, kill their port, and leave them at just 1 forest. Pretty bad situation for my opponent there, and they realize the game is probably over, and they scoop. So that's pretty cool because I never actually drew my sideboard. I'm sure that on the next turn, with 6 cards to look at, I mean, there's an extremely high chance that I would draw one of my sideboard cards. And then at that point, I could extract Loam from their deck using Invasive Surgery, which their deck doesn't work too well without that. So I guess Punishing Fire is all they got left at that point. But yeah, great games, I thought. A lot of fun. So it's a neat deck. Like I said, I don't know that it's the epitome of what you want to be playing. It's a lot of fun, and it's a solid deck if you understand the matchups, if you can figure out what's going on early enough, which helps. So anyway, of all the 25 lands in the deck, keep in mind that one of them is the Tabernacle here, and the rest are what they are. So that's all I've got. I hope you enjoyed watching this foray into Legacy fun. Almost feels like Commander in some ways. And if you have any suggestions, I'm definitely open to hearing them. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.